If someone thinks poorly of you, let them. Sometimes not giving a shit is the best move. Thoughts by Dr. Proof. Thought #002, October 9th, 2024. Dr. Proof, Poofy here. Thank you for your support and for hitting the like button on this video. The cost of this video is bound to be at least $100 to $200. I received a ticket for driving while holding a cell phone. More context is here.
I hope you can hear me. I got stopped for using my cell phone. I was actually trying to use text-to-speech dictation, like I did in my messages to you, to write a thought essay regarding our incentives to correct people's poor opinion of us. Ironically, sharing the contents of the essay had the officer rewrite my ticket, because at first he was going to dock my insurance for cell phone usage, but I guess they have a citation specifically for holding the cell phone but not using it. So it was like a whole thing. I was just like, it's so funny because I was writing this essay about if people have a poor opinion of you, let them, because there's not really very many incentives beyond the worry of like some opportunity cost that you're going to miss out on something if they decide that they're going to deny you access based off of their poor opinion of you. But here I am sharing the contents of what I wrote, not necessarily to change your opinion, but just to show you the irony. He's like, well, in fact, the irony did change my opinion. So he did rewrite my ticket. He's like, well, you saved yourself a few $100s and, your insurance won't get docked. But, make sure that you get a phone mount so that way you can continue to dictate without having to hold the cell phone.
I'm new to content creation for YouTube, despite working in the background for Andrew from Don't Walk, Run, and others. Andrew has been trying to push me for years to produce my own content, and for his encouragement, I am grateful. I will drop a link to his channel as well as my latest vid credit from him in the video description, where you will also find a link to Jack Napier's Substack that I mentioned later in this thought. If someone thinks poorly of you, let them. I'll argue that acting on our motivation to be liked is mostly a background process. Judging from how many people admit they tried to get someone to like them that they didn't even like, or even someone who wasn't a very good fit for their life. Working to be liked is something we don't think about until the exchange proves to be verifiably unfair, either because it's one-sided or because the other person just isn't worth the effort. And sometimes the other person is reprehensible. And yet, when left unchecked, that background process will kick in and we'll find ourselves wanting and working to be liked by someone we absolutely despise. There's a lot that we tolerate just so long as the other person likes us. It's how unhappy relationships and friendships last so long. On his March 23rd Substack, Jack Napier reminded his readers that we can't control others. He went on to write, I was expecting a better reaction to me communicating my point more efficiently, and that the more understanding I was towards others, the more understanding they would be towards me. But you can't control a person's reaction, only your response. They react how they want and you decide which reaction merits a response. In a standard situation, someone who thinks poorly of you is an inconvenience, but not necessarily a hindrance. Their negative perception of you presents opportunity costs that sometimes feel like a 1 in a million shot, and people who are used to being mischaracterized, misunderstood, or rightfully hated will take the gamble and leave the poor perception unaddressed. The risk is that the person who thinks poorly of you has a 1 in a million chance of having power over you in the future, or they will come to possess the ability to grant you access to some place or event that can greatly advance your life goals. It doesn't happen often, but it happens often enough that at least one person who lost a big opportunity from being flippant about someone who disliked them. Knowing this, why would I write, "If someone thinks poorly of you, let them"? My friend Techno Junkie told me he had a falling out with a girl he was dating. She said she didn't like liars. "Everyone lies," he replied. And he was right, whether by omission, a form of self-editing, or emotional regulation, or some other way, lying happened. She didn't appreciate that sentiment, nor his following confession. Techno was diagnosed with high-functioning autism as a child. He has a deep interest in topics that aren't suited for breezy company, and in the past he's paid the price for daring to discuss these interests. In fact, in a podcast episode we did together, we discussed CCP's possible involvement in PSYOPs related to gooning content. A link to that episode will be in the description of this video. He admitted to his date that he had to put on a facade when he was with most company, because he learned from experience that being his unmodified self caused others to dislike him. The following are my thoughts on the matter.
I was gonna ask you if you were actually doing the dating thing. I didn't like the outcome of that, that date, but I'm happy that you're dating. There's a lot of nuance. Can I just say, for me personally, I haven't had an issue with being able to get people to understand where I'm coming from because I'm not autistic. But I feel like I do have to hold back quite often because the things that I want to talk about and the way in which I want to talk about them are a bit too intense for most people. So I always have to modify my language in order to kind of just keep them feeling comfortable. So it is a lot like trying to establish trust, because for whatever reason, inconvenience and mistrust are on the same level of offense. Oh my God, you inconvenienced me with some dark topic and you're going to go all the way into it, and, so on and so forth. It's almost the same as them not trusting you. So I do understand your idea of a facade. But I've also learned over time, I haven't dated casually in a long time. I've been with Husbando for, almost 10 years now. I think it'll be 9 next year. In any case, it's been a long time since I've had to use sort of a dating expertise on myself. But I think trying to be able to convey who you are when you're dating it's like fencing. You basically got to wait for your opening and find their weak point and be really quick with it in a way where when it happens to them, they understand that they were in a spar and not necessarily, just in an inconvenient situation. The other way that I've kind of introduced people to the darker aspects of my thinking, or just in general, how neurotic I can be, is by being able to meet them halfway with certain things. So I'll take the example of your date. She doesn't like people who lie, right? And in your mind, whether because you're autistic or because you're a dude, you're you are correcting this notion that she has. You're trying to show her that it's kind of unrealistic because, there's no way that she doesn't lie, right? But in that moment, It's like if she's expressing something that's really important to her, unfortunately, there are ways of doing things that, you know, apply a softer touch but are an inconvenience to you to have to modify. However, you can save a lot of trouble of people misunderstanding. So like where she says, you know, I don't like people who lie. You'd be like, well, what about when you have a guy who's like autistic and he knows based off of several times of being rejected by new friends and new dates that if he acts the way that he wants to act, which is get really excited about a topic that he knows no one's going to be interested in and starts going on about it. Like if he knows that he can't do that in regular company and decides to tamp down that part of his character in order to be more integrated into discussion, is he a liar? It's like so inconvenient, but at the same time, it gets like, because it's not fair of her to not think of these instances where people do lie. It's a lie of omission, or it's, you know, something else, like a modification of who you are in order to you know, assimilate into regular life. Sorry, last note on that whole situation with the girl. I mean, in general, which is why I wrote the essay in the first place. It was like, you know, yes, losing access because of something that you have no control over. Like, you really, like, you can have some measure of control, okay? But, like, people can just have a chemical imbalance and just dislike you, and there's not really any way to correct them or whatever. And they could, you know, rise to some important position that stops you from being able to move forward. But I'm kind of the belief that if that happened, it happened for a reason. I mean, not like, I'm not saying like, you know, I'm not trying to be optimistic. I'm just saying that there are worse things than being denied access by some ignorant motherfucker. Honestly, like, if that was the person who had control over you advancing in life, you know, using their means, like, it's just a bad place to be. At least at that point in time, because that person is, you know, presiding over that area. It's just not a good place to be. If it's that easy for them to deny you access based off of what could have been a misunderstanding or just like sheer laziness on their part. Let's face it, people are lazy and like they'd prefer to trample on your sensibilities as a human being over just wondering if they're wrong or wondering if like, hey, am I missing something by just being cruel or unfair to this person? You know, generally speaking, those types of situations with those types of people who have the ability to grant access are just the worst. And it ends up just not being okay. Like, if you did happen to, you know, save face and correct their opinion of you, you're still at the mercy of their ignorance at some later point down the line.
Regarding Jack's Substack, I wrote, "It is very true that to hope for an outcome from a woman is to relinquish control to her. Women are driven by incentive, and hope is a powerful incentive to women because hope is an indicator that her actions are regarded in some way as valuable to the man. The dread generated from the fear of disappointing him is different from the dread generated by fear of losing him to his own indifference. The former can be used as a bargaining chip for later forms of emotional terrorism where the latter cannot be." Jack revised emotional terrorism to psychological terrorism, but otherwise agreed with the sentiment. Not only can you not control how people react to you, you'll never run out of people who think poorly of you. And when you try to correct their ill-begotten poor opinion of you, it is often the case that you're also relinquishing control, relinquishing the ability to walk away from the situation with perfect detachment. The more you squirm and try to claw your way out of quicksand, the faster you'll sink in the first place. Why bend over backwards for someone who couldn't take 15 seconds out of their day to consider whether they were wrong about you or misunderstood you? To what extent are you willing to compromise yourself in order to get back in their good graces? Not all poor opinions of you are that difficult to remedy. Sometimes a wink and a little flirting could get you places. But was it worth it? As I argued in the voice clips, more often than not. You're just deferring the pain of an even bigger misunderstanding from the person you've just been able to win back the good graces of. From birds or even God's eye view, none of this was too serious. Even if the 1 in a million opportunity person's reconsiderations we discussed earlier hinged on your ability to correct or clarify your position, and you missed the opportunity because you refused, the worst that could happen was that you had to keep moving, adapting, looking for new opportunities with people who are actually worth your time.